Hi, Maneka here, and welcome to the Sovereign Free podcast. I'm here with Sabre, who's originally from the US and she's now living in Paris. And I'm so honored to have you here because I think your whole story and your whole life is just such a testament to that you can come from nowhere and build whatever you dream of and whatever you want. Because I know you started very early. You started at 24 and you started out as a broke college dropout artist, even living in a van for a while. And now, like having multiple figures and income, living in Paris, and at the same time, just inspiring so many other, especially women out there, to just, step into empowerment, step into being their own sovereign being. And we met in I think we met first at the Wild and Free Festival last year, and then in Gran Canaria on some of our international events. And yeah, it was just so inspired by your story, and also about like how you so dedicated going into the skill sets, the automation, the tech, like all of that actually powers what we're doing. So yes, would love to hear a bit more about your background, your story, where you come from, and just take it from there.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Maneka, for having me on today. It feels so beautiful and just hearing you share this, it's so powerful, right? Because when you start something like this, you have no idea where the trajectory is going to go. And then suddenly people are just giving you a little recap, reflash of your own life to you to share with the world. And I think that that's the most important part of doing something like changing your life is you change your life for yourself, but it's also for the story that you get to tell others to be the permission slip for everybody else for the rest of your life, you know? So thank you for that beautiful introduction. Yeah, I am just in awe, honestly, about what I get to live today and like how I've been able to put so much of my who I am together as a woman. And I turned 30 actually in 5 months. I'm in my last 5 months of my 20s. And I'm just reflecting on how most people don't get to even live a scratch of what we get to live in this kind of lifestyle in this community with this kind of business opportunity, even in their whole entire lifetime, and I'm only turning 30. Like, this is insane.
Yeah, it
What
is.
is my life going to be when I'm 70? That's going to be one.
Yeah. Yeah, we were joking just before that. You have on the face here, on the name on the Zoom, you have a 682-3. That's when you reach like the legacy income. And then we're joking, like, my God, like that's just the beginning. Then it's like the dashes in our business means that you come to these huge legacy income levels. And it's like so close, right? It's not that far along the track.
Yeah, I love that it's called dashing too in English, right? It's like we're
Yeah.
dashing for what it is that we really want in our lives, while most people they feel like they can't do that kind of thing, And I feel
Mm.
like for where I come from, I always love to share my story of how I grew up in foster care. Like I didn't grow up with a dad. I had an eating disorder for 16 years. My mom passed away from opiates, unfortunately, before I turned 16. So I watched her go through being sober and really trying to hold it all together as a solo mom, but really just being crushed by society's expectations. This woman was such a light in so many aspects of her life. She literally was such an incredible mechanic. She could work on cars, she could build houses, she could build computers. She was very psychic. She was a great dancer. She could play every musical instrument you could ever think of, sang like an angel. She was drop dead gorgeous. She was a bodybuilder and beat men in weightlifting competitions. Like, I don't think there wasn't anything this woman couldn't do except for love herself. And that was one of the biggest things that I saw, that even though all of these other factors in my life and on statistics, right, on paper, they say that people who grow up in foster care, they're most likely also going to have their kids taken away, or they're going to end up on substances, or they're going to end up with addiction, or they're going to end up, XYZ, fill in the
Mm,
blank. And I just watched what happens when we really don't give ourselves permission to go after our dreams through my mom's experience. So
mm,
I refuse to be another statistic. And I think that anybody listening to this probably feels the same in their own way, in their own regard. Like, we've all been through trauma, whether you've had major trauma or, I don't even want to say minimal trauma, but it all affects us in our own ways, right? But I think that the biggest misconception is it's actually what births what we actually came here to do, and the message that we came here to spread. So I'm just forever grateful that we found our community with high ticket affiliate marketing, personal branding, digital marketing, this whole world that was so foreign to me, but actually gave me a platform and a pathway to actually own my story. Like I'm doing right now, right? Own my story and learn how
mm.
to transpire my story. And that's why when you saw the talk that I did at the Grand Canaria, Canaria, I always forget how to pronounce that one, but I called it Reinventing Your Roots, because that's what we're really doing when you decide to not be another statistic, where you decide to actually go after what it is that you want to create, regardless of what you were told you're capable of, or what you're allowed to do or supposed to do, or what makes you a good girl or a good boy, or whatever it is. And you get to actually define that yourself.
Mm,
And I
mm,
think that that's a really beautiful, beautiful thing that this space has really given me the opportunity to
mm.
explore what that is in my life. I didn't know I was going to be living in Paris, like I had no idea that that was going to be a thing. Because when I started
Yeah.
this business, I was living in a bus. I started in a van when I dropped out of college, but when I upgraded, like I had an art business. I knew how to make money. I actually made up to 30 grand in a single weekend at these festivals. And I bought this bus that was, I think it was like 16 grand when I bought it. And it was a really, really nice converted school bus. But really, I still wasn't feeling free because I didn't have choice. Like, I was still trading my time for money. And I was actually in this cycle where, even though I knew how to make money, trading my time for money, like selling things, hustling, the business model that was in didn't make sense, because all of my money had to go back towards the business and keeping it afloat. So that's why I always say that when I started this, I was always telling myself that I couldn't afford rent in California, because that was the drum that continued to be beaten until I came into this space and got to learn about uncapped income and what that actual potential could be for me. And just
Mm.
gave me permission to dream, permission to live. I mean, at first, when I started this business, I just wanted a house. I'm like, I just want my camper vehicle and the house. That would actually be amazing. And as I started to show myself that I can do these things by actually expanding my vision for my life, it simultaneously expanded my income because of this
Mm.
model. Now I am in Europe, like I didn't even think about living abroad at the time. It was just those increments of your dreams that get to unfold when you really decide to learn how to craft your path. It's so powerful.
Mm, mm. And what would you say what were the turning points for you when you started this business, when you got started? Like, what was moving inside of you? What were the challenges you had to overcome? Like, how did you actually come through those? And like, you're super successful in this business right now. And what would you give to those people that are just getting started, or they're doubting themselves? And I know a lot of young women out there, especially, are like so low in self-worth, and they're not, like you're saying, they're not giving themselves permission to step into another reality. They're like playing it small and playing safe instead of actually like flowering into what's possible, like you've actually done.
Yeah, and it's such a layered question to answer, but I think one of the biggest parts of my healing journey, because that's really what it has been, right, is just really understanding that what we are capable of today has nothing to do with our past, unless we're trying to make it mean that. And it could be a good thing or a bad thing towards our mindset, right? Because I remember one of the biggest challenges that I had starting something like this was to actually create balance in my life, right? Like I had no balance when I started this business. I was working 80 plus hours a week as an artist, like I was doing everything because I thought that that's just what I had to do. I was doing everything. I would wake up, no morning routine. I was really struggling getting into like a regular exercise routine. I never went outside. I literally ate mac and cheese all the time because it was easy and quick and cheap, and I would just eat it and then go back to work. Literally going to sleep at like 2 a.m. and still waking up with an alarm clock, trying to wake up. It was a mess. It was a mess. I was so burnt out in every area. I wasn't going out and hanging out with friends. I really lost a lot of community because I just didn't really have the time. And I just was really stressed and really burnt out and just wasn't taking care of myself. So coming into here, we talk about 80% inner work and 20% strategy. And I was just like, kind of like, okay, that's like a nice concept, but it's easy for you to say, Mr. Millionaire or whatever,
I completely hear you. I've been there as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just like, now you got to get it independent and then you can earn that. And in some elements, I think that that is still true in some elements, but I do believe that the way that I was doing it before, you don't have to do that, where you're working 80 plus hours a week and you're sacrificing your health, your mental health, and your security, not having a roof over your head, sacrificing to live in the bus, Granted, living in the bus was a choice to do that fun, freedom, nomad life, but really another part of it was like, instead of putting money to rent, we're just going to keep pouring it into the business and hope eventually, it's going to pay out. 6 figures later, not made, but, I had made, but not profited, but poured into the business. It proved unsustainable. So I had to just really be open and coachable to what these people were saying of this whole 80% inner work, 20% strategy thing. And that had me, it was a slow burn for me, to be honest, of learning how to just get my priorities right in fitness. Like it was fitness, it was having boundaries with myself and my time and the type of people I was surrounding myself with. And one of the hardest things for me was actually even just getting really radically honest with myself about, yes, who I was surrounding myself with in terms of community and friends. I had that unlock, I felt, because I loved our community and I stayed close to our community and I started hanging out with entrepreneurs. But I had a partner at the time who, we were together for almost 5 years, and it just was the thing that was it was the iceberg, you know what I mean? Like it looked nice on the surface, but underneath it was actually responsible for a lot of, it wasn't him, he's an amazing man, but us being together did not bring out the best in either of us. And I had to really admit that for myself, that we just weren't right. And that kind of relationship, you become best friends. We were doing everything together. That was my comfort zone, especially not having close family in my life, like that was also my security. And that was hard. It like makes me want to cry right now thinking about that, because that's such a hard thing for so many people. It's like being willing to say goodbye to your comfort zone. And for me, I was able to do that with places. I don't know, I learned that through foster care. I bounced around enough where I'm like, I'm not attached to like places and communities, they'll come and go. But my relationships, I had always been in long-term relationships since I was very young. And I clinged to that for my security. And I realized I was like, I actually had a moment where I had my first multi-5-figure month in this business. And it was before I had even had, even a $5,000 month in my business. So it was quite a big quantum leap. I kind of just got pushed to like, look what's possible. Things can change like that. And I was telling myself this through affirmations and meditation and all the inner work that I was learning, right? But I never knew it was around the corner until it just hit me. And the biggest fear that came out for me was, if I am successful, is he going to come with me? How is this going to
Um,
work? You know? Oh, so that was very, very challenging. And it was interesting because my body expressed a lot of different ways that this panned out. Like my drive for my business, for instance. Now you couldn't take me off track even if you tried. Like, it's actually impossible. But back then, well, I guess I shouldn't say it's impossible, right? But I believe that it would be possible if I were in a situation like that again, if there's something big that I'm ignoring in my life that I know I need to change. Which
Mm,
actually I did have that recently with alcohol, actually. And
mm,
alcohol, I was never a big, like, I wasn't addicted to alcohol or anything like that. But it was another one of those radically honest things of, like, things I needed to let go of my life that had become such a comfort zone or normal part. But when I was with this person, with my ex, my body was also doing things where I just would be out of commission for like 2 weeks at a time, where I just couldn't do anything. And I was feeling like I was just spiraling in emotions. I was crying. I was going into like self-deprecating, self-desperation. It just was despair
mm.
that I would feel. And I would go into this, and it would just be so hard for me to show up. And, I would allow myself the space to do it, but there's a fine line of allowing yourself the space to heal, but then like wallowing it and letting it
Mm,
consume. And I was doing that a lot. And I think now looking back at it, I was doing it a lot to avoid really facing the pain of making the decision that actually I really need to make some big changes in my life. And that would
yeah.
mean,
Mm,
at the time it was him, and this most recent one was alcohol. And alcohol is a big one for a lot of people because it's such a normal thing at so many events everywhere around. Like, even I
mm.
would celebrate things in my business. I'd go celebrate and have a drink. And it was this interesting, like, snake eating its tail thing. But
Mm,
that's been one of the biggest challenges, is just like the being just that radical honesty with yourself of things that
mm,
maybe you like them and they're part of your comfort zone. They feel really good in the moment, but really a bigger part of the time, it's like that iceberg effect where it might feel good that little bit of the time, but really most of the problem lies underneath.
yeah,
And to
definitely.
be willing to actually look at that on my journey, and it's shown up on macro and micro levels on my journey. The
Mm,
macro ones I could think of on the top of my head have been alcohol and relationships, but then
mm,
on a micro level has been even just, I don't know, habits of not exercising, or staying up too late, like just not prioritizing my sleep,
mm,
or binge eating. Like, I had an eating disorder for so long that I still say I have a recovering eating disorder, because I want to be mindful that I have spent over half of my life with an eating disorder. So I'm still rewiring the brain. But it's like those little things that will reflect on a micro level on my self-care habits and rituals with myself.
mm,
It's so
mm.
hard because I really see those aspects of the iceberg effect, because as soon as you are able to actually really get radically honest with those things, and you have the courage and the audacity to eliminate what doesn't serve you. I'm a fan of automation, so you can automate the things that you're just shouldn't be doing over and over, and delegating and really allowing yourself to get refined in your genius zone. Then you start to realize that you get to live in this really beautiful, sweet, sweet spot of life that now I know, as long as I'm honest with myself, I can be very successful. As
Mm.
long as I'm honest with myself. Doesn't mean I'm honest with myself 100%. I'm working on it, and I don't know if I'll ever be 100%. We all have
Exactly.
these
Like no
things.
one's perfect, but I love that you're talking about that, like the sweet spot and the actually living life, because we've discussed that before, like this, how I
Yeah.
also feel like moving into this way of living and making business is allowing me to be in my feminine as well, in the way of just like a lot of the days I follow my flow, I follow my inspiration. And since I'm in love with this business, I do this business, but I do it with flow. I do it with love. It's not that kind of 1, 2, 3, you have to do this and da da da. I do have, Trellos and schedules, but that's just to support me to
Yeah.
like to be in the flow, to just, okay, yeah, that's right, I wanted to do that, like I want to do this, to find what you want to do, not like what you're scared and you have to do, or like someone will get mad at you if you don't do it, or do you yeah, you see the
Yeah.
difference? I think a lot of people are just like listening to what, if I would expand, someone would come and try to bang me down or say that you're crazy, or no, you don't have the time or the money to build anything. But yeah, would you like to talk about also um, how you can use, because I know you're using technology, you're using a lot of tools to actually power what we're doing, but you're still staying in the feminine, you're still staying in the flow. Like how have you found that balance, like you said, and how can you explain that to someone who is very new to it? Like how you can still be authentic and just be happy, live, and still have the balance of like building this hugely successful business?
Yeah. I feel like we're all still figuring it out, right? But
Definitely.
I think one of the things that you said is a really big part of how I had to reframe how I look at doing business in the flow, or feminine or masculine, right? It's like when you say that you have these schedules in your Trello and your organization to support you to be in the flow of what it is that your desires are. Like that's the powerful thing. I remember this statement somebody said where they said, the most incredible divine union relationship you'll ever experience is not with another man. It's actually when you are willing to embrace and embody the masculine within you. And so there's this idea of the kundalini, right, up your spine, that has the feminine and the masculine snake. So it's like they both have to work in tandem. And I've tried to do things where, actually recently, I tried to do this thing where I was like, I'm just gonna eliminate all the structure and just stop doing these things that I knew was actually what got me to where I wanted to go. But I knew I needed to, looking back now, I wish I would have just scaled back, but I had to try this as an experiment, right? Like you just got to experiment when you're an entrepreneur. I tried just scaling back and doing the bare freaking minimum, but the things that I knew worked. Like I got to a point where I knew what really works. Like obviously I need to be making connections with people and following up and having these relationships being built, and I need to be creating content. Okay, cool. And then that's it. You can do that literally in an hour, 2 hours a day. You know, if you really just stay concise, you don't go into scrolling, you don't go into, oh, I'm gonna go make some food, or oh, I'm gonna go do this and go in between. You could spread that out throughout the day if you want to get distracted like that. But if you really want to be focused, you can just do these few things: post my stories, post my reels, or check my ads, or whatever it is, and do the bare minimum. But what was really interesting was I had a lot of success with that, actually, the first months that I did it. And then I think I got a little overconfident, where I kind of went into this thing of, okay, cool. So I don't have to do as much as I even was then. I'm going to see what happens then. But then I wasn't doing what I knew I needed to do to move the needle forward, but I was kind of willing on faith. I think that's what a lot of manifestation coaches and these things, like people will kind of get that a bit twisted of, like, there's the law of attraction, but there's action within the word attraction, right? So you do stop to take the action. And what was really funny was me going too much in the void and the flow and the feminine space was actually where I found the most self-sabotage, because I wasn't really anchored and rooted in that belief for myself, that I didn't know what to fill it with things that were actually going to be healthy for me whether it was the actions or the self-care, the time away. And that's actually when my drinking got a little sideways. I was like, oh, and through that experience, I recognized how much structure in my flow really, really holds me. It's really where I thrive. I
Mm.
don't thrive when I have too much structure. I have a lot of structure in my life, but I'm still not doing sales calls right now, for instance. Um, Occasionally I'll hop on a call with someone if I feel that intuitive nudge, right? If I want to, but I've scaled back rather than just eliminated it all. I brought back the structure that I knew worked, but I stopped doing the things that don't light me up. And that's, you don't have to go through what I did, where you go and self-sabotage because you're like, what do I do with all my time now? This can't be that easy. Let me see how I can mess this up subconsciously. But you can know through hearing this that just the importance of, yes, taking the action and taking the space. But if you have too much action, it's going to burn you out. If you have too much space, unless you really know what you're going to fill that space with in a healthy way. Now, for me, living here by myself as a single woman with no family here and don't speak the language yet, it was kind of actually, I was faced with the challenge of like, shoot, what do I fill this space with? You know? And I could have used that time so much more productive than I did. But again, that is action. That
Mm.
is structure. So the moral of this story is really to just understand the importance of the action that you need to take, but it doesn't need to be working 80 hours a week like I
Mm.
was back in the day when I was an artist. You don't need to do that in a model like this.
Mm.
It doesn't even make sense. Like you can't even, if you try to spend all day from when you woke up to when you go to sleep, you're likely probably spending 80% of that time on things that don't even matter. That's the ironic thing of it, right? Like,
Mm.
but if you actually only had 2 hours, 4 hours a day, whatever that is, and you really, really treated those 4 hours like you made sure you got the core things done, which is always learning something, self-care, relationship building, and documenting your life, right? Through writing or your voice, like we're doing now.
Mm.
Then you're good. And you just don't give up. You
Mm.
don't give up because you don't know what's on the other side of the corner. That's why I love telling my story when I had that multi 5-figure month before even having a 5-figure month. And that was 16 months into my business.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Yeah.
So most people would have quit. A lot of people start businesses and they quit because they don't think that they see people that have all these big months, but they forget the time and consistency that they have built to have that then happen in their lives.
Mm.
So unfortunately, people will come and think that they're doing all the right things and they did all this stuff for 3 months, 6 months, but you've got to give it time
Mm.
because there are people that didn't even have their first sale in their first year or even their first 2 years who are actually earning multi 6 figures, you know,
Mm.
and
Mm.
passive. So it's just, yeah, at the end of the day, not comparing your chapter 1 to somebody's chapter 20 and recognizing you do have to take the action, but you also need to take the space.
Mm.
But as you go, I always love to say confidence builds confidence, where confidence is the skills that you're building, right? The skill of consistency, the skill of not giving up. That's definitely a skill. Would you agree? That the more you build those skills, the more confidence you have. So even if I do have like a slower time in my business, I know it's coming back up because I've
Yeah,
seen it
very
before.
exciting. Well, that's amazing to hear. And just talking about that, like being consistent, sticking to it. And you said like you're not gonna give this up for anything, like whatever comes in your way. What do you think? What is driving you? Like, what is the bigger vision for you? Like that you are creating here? Would love to hear like your and go wild. Like, what is the big vision? Because I think that's something I remember actually being in mentorship with Balazs, one of our like mentors in the international community, and he asked me this question, like, okay, but we were sharing our visions, and then it's like, okay, but what's your big vision? Like times 10.
Yeah.
I would love to
Yeah.
hear yours.
Yeah. Well, mine has changed a lot, and I'm always open for it to continue to grow and evolve and change. Because like I said, at first it was just having a really upgraded camper vehicle and a home. But then it was like, okay, getting clear on like, what does that home look like? You know, where is it going to be? And as I started to travel, I was like, oh, maybe over here. Oh, and starting to go stay at nicer places. I thought, man, I didn't know I needed a heated toilet or a bidet. Like there's just things like that. And you just start to expand. But actually, I moved to Europe because I want to buy a chateau. I really, really desire to have a chateau retreat center. That's like, I want it to be my French country getaway in the south of France on the beach. But I also want it to be a space that I can pass down, and people in the Enagic world and in my team and the bigger team and maybe even Enagic events can be able to do events there, like
Mm.
long after me. And why would I want to do something like that? Well, I think one of the things is like, why not? like seeing the potential that we have in Enagic. I can't just sit here and say, for me personally, I would love to become a multimillionaire, not just because of the money, but because of the journey. I want to expand like my fullest potential of what I'm really capable of, like in my body, in my mind, in my relationships, in my dance, my dancer, in the places I travel, and the way that I can contribute, all of it. So that's why I want to be a multimillionaire. But you can't just say, I want to be a multimillionaire. You have to really define where that money's going to go. So as I've gone through practices of, well, I don't know, where is that money going to go? Like, do I really need all of that for me? No, I don't. And what kind of causes do I want to contribute to? And what's that going to look like? And I think one of the things that really inspired it for me was going to Burning Man. I love Burning Man. I haven't gone in 5 years, but before lockdowns, before COVID, I went for 7 years in a row, and I performed there, and I ended up, I had like a burlesque show that I would host there. It was this whole thing, and I just loved the community coming together and creating art for the sake of art. And there was workshops and things you could expand your mind into and all these things, just big celebration of life. But I feel like it's very unsustainable, Burning Man is. And it's also quite commercialized in a way that there's a lot of things that I feel like is really, really good that Burning Man brings. But I'm like, man, I want to mix what I saw at Freedom Fest that I went to back in 2020 from our Freedom Era community. I want to mix that with, because they are like a Burning Man community, but what's hilarious is the founders of our community have not gone to Burning Man. I'm like, you guys are crazy. You have Burning Man themed parties, but you have not gone to Burning Man. So anyway, seeing that, but like pairing the Burning Man celebration of life, but not for people to celebrate life for 1 week in the desert and go back to their freaking mundane jobs. We call it the like afterburn blues, when you have to like go back to the real world. I'm like, why do we have to go back to the real world? Why don't you just actually create a life of art and celebration and do it for a bigger purpose? Because obviously we're not just trying to freaking party for all year round, right? Like, I want this chateau retreat center to be something where people will have masterminds and will have gatherings and will have incredible gala events and things like this to really celebrate transformation. Who it makes me want to cry again. I get passionate about
okay.
but transformation of who we get to become, like the people that are really committed to it, because we deserve it. As an entrepreneur, it's so important to celebrate the little wins every single day, and it's so powerful to go to these events like our Magic anniversary and the Freedom Era events and these kinds of things and the incentive events and everything. So I'm like, I want to create something for that, because there's going to be a big ass team. By the time I'm 70, like I mentioned, I'm like, man, I'm only 30, so I'm going to be doing some really big things. Like,
You're
how
gonna
do
be
I want
watching this in like 10 years and like, oh my God, look at how far we've come from then.
Yeah, like I really truly see that. And it's so funny when I tell some people about my dreams because they're just like, oh, it's really expensive, real estate in France and and I'm like,
But it's so funny, like you say, it's like it's just happens like gradually that you both expand what's possible in your mind, and then it's actually reflecting. Like just me sitting on my farm, like where I would dream of like having a farm and living there and like building our house and like we are doing that. Like it is here right now. And sometimes I have to kind of pinch myself and like, oh my God, we're actually doing this. Like I wouldn't even dream of it. Like 5 years ago when I started this, completely stuck in the 9 to 5, being a teacher, like my just catching my breath all the time, so super stressed out with like 3 kids at home and a business and full-time job. Like with all of that, I built the business in 1 year. Like and anyone can do it, like it is. And but just like you say, I've also had these ups and downs in the business. Like recently I had a period where I was had some health struggles I had to deal with, and like it's not that, I mean, this business never goes down like completely. It's like, yeah, it's there, but it wasn't what you get kind of used to a certain level, it's you get used to the expansion. I was like, oh my God, what's happening? But then it's like y- you kind of, since you have it in your backbone, it's like anything when you learn to drive or when a baby learns to walk, it's like now I'm well again, and I know I have the belief, and I know that if I take these actions, the wheel is starting to turn again, and I'm going to come up to those income levels again. And now, like, yeah, I've been like working again for a couple of weeks, and instantly just like boom, boom, boom. But it's easy, like you say, when you know it, like those what do you say, big dreams are not that big any longer when you actually see the steps that is so real and so possible for you to take to actually come there. It's like when you learn to kind of backtrack and like, okay, then if I'm going to have, like we're aiming for like 1 million Swedish a month, like 100,000 euros months, like that's it's just locked in my head. But then it's like, well, I've already made like uh, 30,000 euro months many times. Like it's just three times that. It's not much actually. It's just
Mhm.
like it kind of, but when you start, I see it in so many people that are new in this. When they haven't done, like you said, when they haven't done the inner work of seeing what is possible, it seems so hard,
Yeah.
But then once you've actually experienced it and you know from experience how, then it's like you just expand and expand. Like it's so beautiful to see. And I'm sure you're going to have your mansion and or your chateau. And I'm really looking forward to come there and yeah, just celebrate, like you say, because this whole community is so much about also celebration and enjoying life and living life. And it's so beautiful to see so many people doing that, like you as well.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yay.
It was like I was so annoyed when I would hear people say that you just have to believe it before you see it, right?
Yeah.
But what I
Mm.
want to stress is like that we have this belief right now about us, not just because we've seen it for ourselves, but we actually had to see it a lot of times for ourselves before we actually created it in physical reality, like that time that I had that multi 5-figure months for my first time before I even had my my $5,000 month. I was visualizing every day. I'm still visualizing every day.
Mm.
I
Mm.
visualize me being like crazy fit, doing the craziest things with circus arts. And I visualize like the chateau and like hot air balloons and like a
Oh.
locked space with the big old fire and chandelier and all this stuff. And I visualize every single day. I have not stopped. And that's the important thing is that it just expands. And the fact that, you know, the way that you feel where you have to pinch yourself, I feel that every day when I walk around Paris because I'm just freaking out. Like, man, my goal is to get a chateau in the next 5 years. And finally, before I'm 30, I'm learning like some real like holding on to money and actual wealth building strategies. I started investing 2 years ago. So now I'm actually like really gonna pump up more of that and like have refined my why to really commit to this, that even more so why I need to keep investing. And you know, it's been 5 years. It's been actually almost 5 years, not even a whole 5 years since I started this business. And I had no idea I was going to be in Paris. So of course I can get a chateau in the next 5 years. You know, like
Of course.
I'm like, man, this is gonna be so good. So it's so powerful.
It is, it is. And it's beautiful to see like people growing and like you said, reinvesting into because it's something you learn in the community as well. Like, well, to expand, you need to reinvest. You need to understand that you're not going to get, into that expansion if you don't dare to get uncomfortable and kind of stretch yourself. But do it
Yeah.
like little by little, and once you've done it so many times then you're there like finally. So Saber, thank you so much for sharing. Any last words, anything else you'd like to say to, like, especially I believe like all these young women out there that are playing small, like what do we say to them?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's just that confidence built confidence statement was so big for me because we have this story that we have to be confident before we can go on camera. We have to be confident before we do an interview like this, or before we start a business, or whatever it is. Or we have to have the money before we go do the thing. All of these stories, we have to have XYZ before we do XYZ. But it actually works the other way around. I wasn't born, being good on camera. It's like going to the gym. I always reflect entrepreneurship to a fitness journey because it's so true. You can't sit here and think, oh, I have to have abs to work out. You know what I mean? It's like, no, you get abs by working out. And it's just one of those things that we just really need to understand that there's nobody that's special. There's nobody, I mean, we're all special, you know what I mean? But there's nobody that has any superpower. We are all actually humans. And we have just learned how to reframe stories in our mind. And it takes diligence. It takes a lot of diligence. So filling your mind with things that are really going to continue breathing belief into you that you can do this, like this podcast. I listen to podcasts every single day of people like Ed Milet, Raj W. Cardos, and all kinds of people that are just filling my brain with rewiring my brain. And right now, for instance, even with money, like I mentioned, I'm really refraining a lot of like holding the money wealth. I can't just sit here and expect that I'm just going to change that identity overnight, right? I actually am prioritizing listening to more things on why I need to be saving, why I need to have a buffer, why I need to be investing, and actually learning about these kinds of things. Because before I wasn't even learning about it. I was just like, I know I need to do it. And it's like, I don't know, I just still would have this thing of just doing the bare minimum of it, and I just knew I wasn't where I really needed to be. So I have to be diligent. We got to be diligent of changing our minds, and knowing our minds are so malleable, and the stories and things that we tell ourselves, these big emotions that we have, even if it looks like self-sabotage, you're out of commission for 2 weeks and you're sitting there questioning your life like I was many times with past relationships. It's like just knowing that those stories and emotions are not actually true, and you actually are always in the driver's seat of your life. It is actually it's literally a choice. And it's the most annoying thing to hear sometimes. You're like, wait,
Yeah.
the choice, it's just a choice. That's easy for you to say, but it's like, it's actually not easy for me to say because I'm just choosing to say.
No, No, but I completely hear you. It's like, I've been coaching so many people over the years. Like we have this growing team. It's beautiful to see, but it's like I keep on hearing like people distracting themselves. Oh, like you say, like I just have to do this before, or I just have to do that before. And it's like, and when it gets down to business, it's like very, very simple steps. And if you keep taking them, like you said, it's like outreach, conversations, like really showing people what we're about, what we're doing, having the relation, building relationships, having the calls with people, whatever way you do it. But it's like it's to have this persistence to just stick to the things and being honest, like, is this really taking me forward or not? Like,
Yeah.
is this important? Like, what is important and what do I really want? You know, to ask those questions. That's what I see with people really succeeding. Like in my team, it's just like they have like the discipline in a way, but they do it because they love what they do. They love their vision. They know that if I stick to this, it will take me forward, you know.
Yeah.
Saber, thank you so, so much. I'm looking forward to see the rest of your story, like see where you're taking this. And you're such an inspiration for me and so many other people. And being your authentic self, being just so like with emotions, with all the struggles, like being so open with your story, I think just helps so many other people to see, like you said, we're all just human, and wherever you're coming from, it doesn't matter. Like there is this possibility, there is this way for everyone into just living a full life, which is what I think you and me are so passionate about. So thank you so much for being with me today, and see you on the next event and celebrating the next dashes.
Yeah.
Say-
Thank you so much for having me. This was such a beautiful conversation. It was
Mm.
absolutely an honor.
Oh. Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Bye.